Hi, I'm Kent Greenfield. I'm a professor of law at Boston College Law School, and I've been teaching at Boston College for about 16 years now. I do constitutional law and corporate law. So it's a great question, and I think there are a couple of things that I can say. First of all, choice. I do believe that some choice is good, but I think we probably fetishize it too much, especially in the West. I think choice can be easily overwhelming. So let's first talk about the choices that sort of the everyday choices that we go into Target. And one of the things that's true about humans is that too much choice quickly becomes overwhelming. I tell a story in the book about my wife and I trying to shop for a vacuum cleaner, and we went into Best Buy. There were literally two aisles of vacuum cleaners. We had no idea which one to pick. The salesperson wasn't really much of a help, so it took us, two reasonably smart people. It took us an hour, and we still my wife. And I'm not making this up, threw up her hand. I'm leaving. I don't know what to do. And so I said, look, I'm an expert on choice, supposedly. I'm going to choose a darn vacuum cleaner. And we did, and I ended up taking it back the next week. So because it wasn't the right kind, we didn't like it. So choice easily becomes overwhelming. There's this famous experiment about jam, right? Two stores. One store offered three kinds of jam to sample and to offer for purchase, and another store provided a couple dozen. And of course, the store that only offered three sold more jam because people can choose among three types, and it's much harder to sell among 24. And the people who bought from the three actually were happier with their choices later. They didn't have as much regret. So from that sort of mundane, those profound but sort of small scale examples, one can make extrapolations to broader policy issues like you propose. So, for example, now the economists would say, neoclassical economists would say, more choice is always better. You can map with given more options, people can find a product or a service that best maps with their pre-existing preferences, and therefore they're going to be happier, right? So the economists would say, actually offer 200 kinds of jam, people would be able to find it. Now the reality, though, is that people are overwhelmed by choice, and preferences are often a product of the market rather than driving the market. Now I noticed in the New York Times article about Steve Jobs last week, Steve Jobs was quoted as saying, it's not the consumer's job to know what they want. So, and Steve Jobs was a master at getting us to desire something that we didn't know we wanted ahead of time. I mean, who wanted an iPod or an iPhone? I hear my iPhone going off before they existed, and so he was a master at that. So what does this mean for public policy? It means for public policy that offering more choice isn't always the best idea. And so here are a couple of examples. It may be that we want people to have a 401k frameworks. We want to require people to have 401ks rather than have it be an option, or to have an opt-out regime rather than an opt-in regime on retirement plans. For public employees, we should offer them 3 choices of retirement plans rather than 30, because we know if we offer them 30, they won't choose any at all. Now, another example I talk about in the book is the current debate over healthcare and healthcare, the so-called individual mandate. Now, here's an area where it's the biggest issue in constitutional law and maybe the biggest issue in politics these days. What should we do with so-called Obamacare, with the Affordable Care Act passed by the Congress during Obama's first term? Now, this fight in large part turns on whether the so-called individual mandate is good policy and constitutional. So in a way, this is all about the nature of coercion. Is it coercive to force people to pay for insurance? So one of the things one of the implications of my book, perhaps, is that it's not so jarring to force people to make this choice, because actually, if we want people to be responsible, it's not a bad idea to force them to be responsible. The other thing is that if personal responsibility is choice, and I think the Tea Partiers often equate personal responsibility as simply being able to choose, that only has meaning when people have to pay for the cost of their own choices. So, for example, let's say that I own a motorcycle. I don't anymore. I used to. And let's say that I don't wear a helmet. And I must admit, back in those days, I didn't always wear a helmet. That was incredibly stupid, right? Is it contrary to personal responsibility to force me to wear a helmet? And actually, it's a harder question than it might first appear. Now, one would say, if personal responsibility means being mature or being responsible, of course you should wear a helmet, and it's not inappropriate for me to be forced to wear one. If the personal responsibility means that I have to pay for my own choices, it's actually it's not so clear that the law should be that I need not wear a helmet. I think the libertarian perspective is always that don't force people to wear a helmet. Just make them bear the cost of their own stupidity. By it's their skull that's going to be broken. It affects no one else. But there are two responses to this. One is that every one of us has effects on others, and so if I lose my skull if I crack open my skull because of my own stupidity, it costs others. And either I should be forced to pay for those costs, if personal responsibility means choice, or I should be forced to avoid those costs ahead of time. And there's no dependable way to force people to settle up after the fact. So maybe the best way for them to really be responsible for their own decisions is to force them to wear a helmet or pay ahead of time. And the way you make them pay ahead of time is to force them to buy insurance. And here's my healthcare point. It may be the fact that people let me start again. It may be true that people who don't have health insurance think that they can pay out of their own pocket for whatever medical care they need, and it may be the case that people who eat a constant stream of fast food and never exercise and smoke think that they can pay out of their own pockets for all the cost of those bad decisions. But in reality, most people don't have the resources to pay out of their own pockets for the health care that they will need over the course of their lives, even if those lives are shortened by bad decisions. Now, Ron Paul said a few weeks ago that people who don't have insurance should simply be left to die if they get sick or get injured. I don't think we live in a country where people should be forced to walk by someone in need who has run into a tree riding a motorcycle without a helmet and without helping. And if we do force people to do that, then that's a cost to them that we shouldn't force them to bear. So the question is, how do we force people to bear the cost of their own bad decisions? The only dependable way to do that is to force them to buy insurance ahead of time. And so in that respect, I think the Affordable Care Act should have been called the Personal Responsibility and Health Care Act. The only way to make sure that people pay for their own bad decisions in healthcare is to force them to pay insurance at a time. So that's one public policy implication. Thank you. Enjoyed it.